Kevin Holland versus Marvin Vettori at UFC Vegas 23. Now, this fight, I looking just at the past performances, Kevin Holland, which was obvious that his past performance against Derek Brunson, it was at UFC UFC 2. I'm not going to say the wrong thing off the top of my head, but his last performance against Derek Brunson, which wasn't that good. He was talking throughout the whole fight, and basically, he fucked up, and he lost against Marvin Vettori. Well, in this fight, I said that Marvin Vettori, looking at Marvin Vettori's past performance, that Marvin Vettori's stand-up is good, but his takedowns are better. His ground game's really good. His ground game's really good, as that's what we saw in this fight. And I have to say that Kevin Holland, one of the things I noticed, one of the first things I noticed about this fight is that he wasn't talking at all. He's rarely barely ever talking at all. His post fight interview with one of the journalists there, he said that he's just gonna, I think, go fly home, have some drinks, and go out to the clubs or whatever. That's just some sort of wise guy sort of comment, cheeky comment. But the fight, at first it did. The fight itself, I see Holland's stand-up was good. It was good. Vettori's stand-up was okay, but I think where Vettori really excelled, where he really shone, was the ground game, the takedowns. He was really good with those, and he managed to control his opponent. His wrestling, you could see his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu, all of that in his ground game was really good. He managed to keep Holland on the ground for a long while, and he managed to control Holland and keep him there while he was dishing out some clean strikes. And it's obvious, Vettori won by unanimous decision. For Kevin Holland, and this is something I'm going to probably come back to again towards the end of the podcast. This will now be a second fight which he's lost at 2 in a row. The first one was against, as I said, was against Derek Brunson, and this one is against Marvin Vettori. And one of the things that's, should I say? No, I'll say that towards the end. But overall, I think, can I say honestly that I called it? Yes, because I said, just looking at the two guys, I thought that Marvin Vettori would have the upper hand here. Kevin Holland, who in the fight, will also say when it comes to his stand up, his reaches are long. The way he punches. I mean, where his shot's going to land, it can be with significant distance away from him. So you can see in the fight that he does have a long reach. But again, where he really lacks is his ground game. His wrestling needs to be a lot better. So you could see that when it comes to being taken down, being clinched, being wrestled down onto the floor, jiu-jitsu, judo, Marvin Vettori really had the upper hand there. Many of the people in the mixed martial arts community were saying that one guy even said that Holland needs to be locked up in a cage to just learn wrestling for 2 weeks or so, or just to learn wrestling for as long as it takes him to improve his wrestling. So, and not to forget, Holland took this fight on at short notice because the other guy, who is someone who everybody knows, Darren Till, he was initially scheduled to fight Marvin Vettori, but because he injured his collarbone, I think it was a collarbone, or he had a serious injury somewhere, he couldn't fight, so he had to pull out. So up next was Allan versus Youssef, the featherweight division. So Allan, So Allan showed some good ground game, and Youssef, though when he had Youssef on the floor, Youssef did manage to slip out of it. But Allan's stand-up was really good. He was really good with the counter-striking, and there was that mean left hand that sent his opponent just running backwards towards the other side of the octagon. But even when he was dishing out some head kicks, and when he lost his balance twice, I think on each occasion they tried to dish out, or not tried to, but he actually dished out a good clean head kick. He did lose his balance and fall over, but he managed to get right back up again in the next second, and he won by unanimous decision. And this fight, I actually said that Youssef would actually win. I think the reason I gave probably was because his striking was really good, his stand-up was really good, that the other guy probably wouldn't win. But I think I've seen, and with the other fights I'm just yet to talk about, is it's not really about how. I think it's more to do with not just with how much power you have. Power can help you with striking when it comes to knockouts and TKOs. Yeah, it's really good help with that, understandably. When it comes to other things such as when it comes to things such as not gassing out too soon into the fight, especially early on into the fight, and having good stand up, having good jiu-jitsu, having good ground game. Being tactical, being patient with your how you fight. You have to be really smart. So, for some of these fights I saw on the card, I thought that one opponent would win just because of they're a bit bigger, they're more muscular, they're a lot more leaner, they're much more athletic. So I thought because they have those attributes on their side, that they would have the upper hand when it came to fighting and defeating their opponent. But that wasn't the case, especially for the last fight I'm going to talk about. So moving on, we have Sam Alvey versus Julian Marquez. Now this is the middleweight division. To start off with, both guys did show some pretty decent stand up, but Marquez did seem to be at the beginning, from what I could see, this is my first interpretation, my first thoughts, Marquez did seem like he was getting the worst end of the deal at the beginning of the fight, but towards the end, he changed things a lot, and he just let loose with the counter striking, and he got his opponent Alvey on the floor, and then soon after was going into a rear naked chokehold, and he won by a technical submission. I'd have to say that looking at Alvey's record, this is his 5th loss in a row. So although nothing's been said, I'm just wondering, because I've seen when a fighter reaches a certain age, and I'm guessing that in some scenarios, if they've lost so many fights in a row, especially if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these are their recent fights they've just fought without a single intervening winning fight that they've won, regardless of their age, I've got where the UFC is concerned, I'm wondering whether they are going to potentially cut them if they're losing all those fights and they're not really making any proper progress in winning, because after his fifth loss in a row, nothing has been said, but I'm just wondering what Dana White will be thinking, and if he's 34 years old, 34 going on 35, or 33 going on 34. So I'm wondering whether the organization are going to be having just considering whether they should cut him, and whether he would have to go to another organization, probably go to Bellator, One Championship. Who knows? Because after this fight, he did post quite an emotional video on his Instagram or his Twitter, and he just wasn't happy about how the whole thing had panned out. So after that, we have what have I covered? Yeah, after that we have we have Mike Perry and Daniel Rodriguez. Well, how many fights have I even covered here? God, I hope I'm not getting confused. Yeah, so it's not good for the podcast. The next fight after that was the Mike Perry versus Daniel Rodriguez fight, the welterweight division. Now, for this fight, this is one of those fights I have to say that I thought, because Mike Perry looks like someone who's big and someone who, is known for dishing out very heavy blows and really dangerous his striking is quite, dangerous, for the other person. Perry does have a solid chin, a granite chin, so he can absorb shots fairly well. So it's one of those fights that I thought that the other guy probably has a lot more to lose, but that just was not the case. Initially in the days leading up to the fight, my money was on Mike Perry to win. So to start off with, both fighters did show what seemed to be some really, really good stand-up, especially for Daniel Rodriguez. But, it did seem that Mike Perry was getting the worst end of the deal. So he made a smart move, went in for a takedown, and he showed how good his ground game is. And of course, as I said before, his striking is heavy and dangerous, but his stand-up just wasn't as good as Rodriguez. Just wasn't as good as his opponent. And towards the end of the fight, I could see that Perry was quite badly injured. His face was a bloody mess, and I think his nose, he's notorious for having this nose, and every fight it always gets broken or damaged. You can see that it looks very awkwardly indented just around the bridge area. So yeah, he did win. Rodriguez did win by unanimous decision because I think he'd managed to get plenty. Stand up was a lot better than Perry's stand up, and he managed to get far more shots in there. But it's one of those fights that, for me as a novice mixed martial arts fan, I'm learning more and more about the sport all the time. Looks can be deceiving. It doesn't matter how big you are, how tall you are. It just depends how smart you are of the tools you have in your arsenal. How smart you are of your striking, your overall stand-up, your cardio, and how good how smart you are of your ground game, your judo, your jiu-jitsu, and your wrestling. Those I can see. I'm learning all the time that those sorts of things do have just how you use them intelligently, how well you use them smartly, and just not make it too complicated, really can have a big impact on whether you come out as the successor or the loser in a situation like this. I've got another fight. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's another one that I should have covered. Sorry. Alright, I think. Yeah, there was one fight that I should have covered and I should have seen. I was looking everywhere for this fight because at the time when the fights were actually happening, I couldn't watch it, but I was looking all over UFC Fight Pass, all over YouTube, everywhere I could think of. The fight between Mackenzie Dunn and Nina Anseroth, the only female fight that's happening on the main card, on the main half of the fight card for UFC Vegas 23, women's strawweight division. For some reason, I couldn't get a proper replay of that fight. So, sorry guys, that's just not really good of me. But on the preliminary cards, there was one fight in the heavyweight division between Stanho versus Yorgan de Castro, the heavyweight division. So the fight starts off basically both guys are. I'm not trying to retell a story or anything like that, or just trying to retell it as best I can do. Both guys are patiently just pacing up and down. There was a few kicks that dished up by Stanho, and then this fight just lasted just approximately half, or maybe just about just over a half of the 5 minutes for the first round, and just towards the end, not too far off from the end of the first round, Stanho just landed a heavy right hand which knocked out his opponent, which I couldn't really see at the first how he had done it, but I think they replayed it again just after they stopped the fight. They replayed it again. I could see that actually it was with his right hand towards his opponent's temple, towards the Castro's temple, that actually put him in somewhat of a daze. The guy just fell down, and as Dominic Cruz was saying while he was commentating cage side, that did look like quite a nasty KO. I mean, I don't know how these people do it, how these MMA athletes do it. You get knocked out like that, put into a daze. I've heard some stories. People get knocked out, then they come to again. You're just knocked out for about a few seconds. Then what's going on? Then you you wake up again. You wake back up again, and you realize you come round again to from being knocked out, and you come round again from being knocked out, and then you just go back to fighting and just continue as if nothing happened. I mean, that's something for me that if I was to be put in that situation, if I was a professional mixed martial arts athlete, or even to do that as a hobby, it's something that for me it'll take a lot of getting used to, because it's something for me that just seems very, very awkward and weird. Now, as well as looking at this fight, last night, during the week, there was the One Championship on One TNT. Yeah. Now this there there's one fight there that Charlie told me about, but there was another fight really, which was the more or less the center of attention, which was a fight between Eddie Alvarez versus Iuri Lapicus. Now, I think what really basically was, I think it came to what it came down to was Eddie Alvarez being disqualified because of an illegal strike to the back of his opponent's head, to the back of Lapicus's head. Now, how the fight started, basically, it really just started and finished in the first round. Alvarez did seem a lot more patient, quite patient in his stand up and how he attacks the opponent before going in for a takedown. And again, Lapicus up against the fence whilst still having him on the floor, but at the same time having him clinched up against the fence. And what had happened was that I've forgotten how this actually went down. What had happened is that basically, whilst Eddie Alvarez had his opponent up against the fence, he was hitting what in mixed martial arts, basically. Okay, let's say in ONECHAMPIONSHIP anyway, because that's the organization that the fight happened in. If you're hitting your opponent, you cannot hit your opponent towards the back of the head. Of course, this will be obviously known to many mixed martial arts fans and to many combat sports fans. So if you hit your opponent to the back of the head, unless if you're touching their ear, then it's not classed as illegal. If it's clearly just blatantly straight, to the back of their head, then it's clearly illegal and it's a clear disqualification. Now, when I first saw the footage, I thought, okay, yeah, he hit Lapicus's head, so he deserved the disqualification. That's the consequences. That's the punishment. You got to live with it, and it is what it is. But then when he came away saying that no, it wasn't the case at all. No, he wasn't hitting the back of Lapicus's head. I was thinking, no, you gotta be joking. I saw that footage myself, and there's just it's one of those situations where the athlete knows they've done wrong, but they're just trying to save face by saying no, it didn't happen, that didn't happen, blah blah blah. The referee's wrong. But I went back and I watched the footage about 20 times just to make sure that I saw everything as best as I could, and I saw what Lapicus has actually done. Whilst Eddie Alvarez had Lapicus up against the fence, obviously Lapicus in this situation, a very vulnerable situation whereby he can't defend himself at all, can't move his arms because he's just in a really awkward situation. He just cannot move to defend himself or even get out of that situation. So I was watching what was going on, and Lapicus, just as Alvarez was hitting his ear, just hitting the side of his head, not the back but the side of his head. Lapicus cleverly shifted his head just furthermore to the right. So now the back of his head is fully exposed, and so as Eddie Alvarez is hitting his head, I think he does so unknowingly, unintentionally, just land his strike on the back of Lapicus's head. Now in that situation, it almost looks like, and someone said this online on one of the forums, and when I saw this, I could now understand where Eddie Alvarez, why he was so angry and why he was so just felt the whole thing was just so unfair. And even a lot of the media outlets in the US, because he's an American mixed martial arts athlete, so a lot of the media outlets are watching the fight. He even said that a lot of them were actually up in arms, were annoyed at the results of the judge's decision. And I can understand. I agree. Someone I think it was on Reddit, on one of the forums, said that the opponent Lapicus was fishing, well, I say in quotation, but was fishing for just some sort of trap, as I said, as I was thinking, so some sort of disqualification. And yeah, it does look that way, because of course in that situation, you know both guys know the rules very really well, especially for them at their level of fighting. They will know the rules very very well. It does look like Lapicus almost laid out a trap for Alvarez, and Alvarez unintentionally fell into that trap, because obviously in that situation, Lapicus knows there's nothing else he can do. He's by the fence. He's completely almost closed off from defending himself. He can't get out of that situation, and therefore for that reason, he needs, if he can't stop the situation, if he can't get out of the situation, if he can't defend himself in that situation, then at least he has to do something to stop the attacks from the attack from happening, and to stop the situation from going any further, from getting worse. So of course he turned his head, and so I can see why Alvarez is very upset about the decision that the judges made that night. And it does seem very unfair. At first, when I saw the camera footage, I thought, no, disqualification is what it deserves. That's just the consequence. I don't hate Eddie Alvarez. I like him. He's a decent guy. From what I can see, he's a decent person. But in this sport, in this business, if you break the rules, you have to pay you suffer the consequences. So that's what I thought was at first. But running the footage back, and I looked very, very closely, I could see what had actually happened. And the other guy did something very, very slick. I was going to say smart, but no, it was far more on the side of being slick than smart, because he laid a trap for me. And many people may disagree with me when I say this, but he laid a trap for his opponent, and his opponent fell in there. So Alvarez is saying that he wants the whole thing to be, at least he wants the judges to revise the decision. But let's see what happens. I think probably he say he wants probably a no contest instead of a disqualification. A no contest probably works a bit better for him, though it's still not what he wants. But understandably, I would feel the same way if I was in his shoes. If I were in his shoes. So, what was I going to say? So after Marvin Vettori has won his, just speaking about it no less than what feels like 5 minutes ago. After Marvin Vettori's successful win against Kevin Holland at UFC Vegas 23, he now wants a title shot after his win against Kevin Holland, and potentially I think he wants that against Derek Brunson. And I think, I would agree they should get a title shot. He's had about 5 wins now. Get it back on the system. Yep. That's Kevin Holland, Jack Hammerson, Carl Robertson, Andrew Sanchez, Cesar Ferreira. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is now 5 wins. So, and looking at the rankings, Kevin Holland, although I'm not sure if how long it takes the UFC to update the information on their server, but from what I can see here, Kevin Holland sits at number 10, Marvin Vettori sits at number 6. So, it's understandable that he wants a title shot now, even though Kevin Holland was ranked significantly lower than Marvin Vettori in the middleweight UFC division rankings. Vettori still took the fight, so the events could go ahead. His fight with his opponent was going to be the main headlining event for the overall UFC Vegas 23 event. He should have fought Darren Till, who is sitting at number 5. So it's obvious as to why he still took this fight with Kevin Holland. And for me, I'll just give my opinion instead of beating about the bush and bullshitting here. Yes, I think he should get a title shot. If you think there's still more to this that I'm still yet to understand, say it in the comment section down below if you're watching this on YouTube. But from the information I can see, he's won his past 5 fights. He's ranked at a significantly high position in the a fairly high position in the middleweight division rankings for the UFC. So I think that maybe a title shot potentially is on the cards. Depends what the UFC and Dana White think. And don't think there's anything else I've got to say there. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, you enjoyed this podcast. If you did enjoy it, please don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. My podcast is also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, and it's now available on Apple Podcasts. I've finally managed to sort out the issue that was just something. The artwork basically was being rejected by the Apple Podcast server, but it's now on Apple Podcasts, but they're still reviewing it before it becomes officially available to be listened to and downloaded. So yes guys, hopefully enjoy this, and you can also catch me on Instagram. My name is Ojiako1. On Twitter and Facebook, my name is Ojiako. And yes guys, take care and see you in the next one. And guys, sorry, just briefly before I go, sorry about the lighting. It was my intention to film this far earlier on in the day, around 2 p.m., 3 p.m. here in the UK GMT. So just without going into any of that, it was my intention to film this earlier when the daylight would have been better, when the lighting would have been better. So I do apologise for that. Now it's about 7:20 p.m. here in the evening here in the UK. So I do apologise for that, because I'm trying to use as much daylight as possible for just better lighting for the video, and so the video quality will ultimately be better. So I do apologise about that, and thanks again.